All right, this video is on the global warming model. It's at night, like right now, but like, yeah, I was at the golf course and I was telling this guy about how the global warming model is like a flat earth model. And then he became like really defensive because he's like Democrat and like he believes in all this like Green New Deal and global warming stuff. He's bought totally into it. And what it did is it showed me the mentality of these people, that are fooled by it. This guy, he didn't know nothing about solar flux or any of the science. I told him that I studied astronomy since I was a kid, and he just started saying like, oh well, all that matters is like, you have your opinion, I got my opinion, or something like that. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with the opinion. I said it has to do with the model. If you have a false model demonizing carbon dioxide, then that means that carbon dioxide is not causing the heating if it's a false model. And he's like, oh, well, the model doesn't matter. And then he started just making up stuff. He's like, well, if you say that the model's false, then there's got to be another model. So who's saying that the other model's false? It's just their opinions. And I said, no, what you're saying doesn't matter because if you know the science and you know how to read the the math and everything, or you understand the model itself and it breaks the laws of thermodynamics, it just it's a false model. You can't break the laws of like science and the laws of thermodynamics, you know. And I said I understand that. And then I told him on top of it that in meteorology, the meteorologists, they're not required to study the laws of thermodynamics. So then this creates a big, uh, it creates a lot of ignorance about the global warming model by the professionals. You know, they're breaking the laws of thermodynamics and don't even know it. That's the whole thing right there. But like in the model, it's taught at all the universities and by the IPCC. What they do is they're trying to demonize CO2, like in the government, because they got all these agendas that they have. And when you can demonize carbon dioxide, you can create all kind of laws and rules and stuff on corporations, farming. You can sell windmills and solar panels and make all kind of profit because these are like really expensive things and they don't really produce a lot of power. So it's like they make a lot of money off of this stuff and then they get like grants and funding. The people at the colleges, they're getting grant money to study this stuff and teach it. So like they have like money involved. So like they don't want to go against the money that they're making. So like they just keep perpetuating this fear of end of the world stuff. The guy who invented it, the global warming model was this guy named Hansen. But before he created the CO2 global warming model, he created a dust. He was saying that the dust trapped the heat, and then he was just proven wrong on that. That's why he created the CO2 global warming model. But before he created the global warming model, he believed in global cooling. So he was like this catastrophist that just loves to make models, to justify his catastrophism or whatever he believes in. He's a catastrophist. But like it kind of stuck. The CO2 kind of stuck. I guess it confused some of his fellow scientists or whatever, so it kind of stuck. And but the way their model works is crazy. Like, yeah, like in the morning, when the sun goes through all of this atmosphere, it radiates, the atmosphere radiates the energy away, the solar flux away. But yet in the global warming model, they said that, you know, that it traps or there's back radiation. So like technically in the morning there should be like more back radiation because the sun's going through more atmosphere, so it would heat things up more than at noon. But everybody knows that the sun's more intense at noon when it's high in the sky, not when it's on the horizon. So basically it's radiating the energy back out into space. And even the higher energy is being radiated back into outer space. So it can't be doing both. That's the crazy thing, is that they're trying to say that, you know, the atmosphere is trapping, the solar flux and like back radiating. But at the same time, we know that the atmosphere, before these super intense rays that are at 1,300 plus watts per meter square out in outer space, they don't make it to us because the atmosphere blocks it. So it's like it can't be like blocking it and at the same time sending it back twice as much as the sun supplies. That's it's crazy. What they do in their model is they weaken the intensity of the sunlight by flattening the earth, and then they take the intense, like the sun hits the earth intense on one side and no intensity on the other side, because like solar panels work in a day but they don't work at night because the sunlight's more intense in the day than it is at night. So what these people do is they flatten the earth so that the whole earth is like facing the sun. And what that does is when they average the intensity that's on the daylit side over the dark side, it makes it weaker so that it can't cause the weather. Then they blame it on the CO2 as, producing twice the intensity as the sun, or twice the energy as the sun uh, makes. But CO2, it doesn't have any nuclear or chemical reaction. Like, what's crazy, like if you lit a fire at night, the fire's giving off energy, but it doesn't, the CO2 that's in the atmosphere around it doesn't radiate the energy from the fire back to the fire, you know, with twice as much energy as the fire. It's a complete nonsense. It's sophistry. It's like it's pure nonsense. Everybody knows that like the fire at night, a campfire, it isn't heated up by the CO. This trace gas in the atmosphere is not sending the energy of the fire back to the fire. It makes no sense. The fire's creating the energy in the fire. Yeah, but like in their model, they got it like backwards like that. And like everybody knows that the sun's more intense when it's high in the sky. Another weird thing about the global warming model is that like according to their model, when they average the intensity over the whole earth, it eliminates the seasons. So like in the global warming model, there's no summer or winter, there's no sunrise or sunset, there's no North Pole or South Pole, you know? And it's like it's unrealistic. And in philosophy, if you have a false based premise, it doesn't even matter if you have true facts and then you put them onto a false based premise, it makes the whole thing false. So like they start off with this flat earth. Mathematically, the only way that you can have sunlight hitting the whole entire earth at once is if it's flat. Because like in a global warming model, there's, by averaging the intensity over the whole entire, lit and the dark side, that means in their model a solar panel would work at night. In their model, a solar panel would work at night in their model because they're averaging the input of the sun that only shines in the daytime over the whole earth, so that it weakens it on the sunlit side, and then it makes it have intensity on the darklit side where there is no intensity. Like a solar panel works in the day, it never works at night. It's radiating energy out into space at night. It's not getting any input. It's only like radiating it away. That's the crazy thing. And then this guy at the golf course I was talking to, he's like, "Oh no, like the sun heats in the day, and the ground is hot at night." And I said, "Yeah, but that's not input." And then he got confused, and then he just started saying, "Well, your opinion's your opinion." And I'm like, "Well, it has nothing to do with opinion. It has to do with the model. If the model that is demonizing the carbon dioxide is false, then it means that the carbon dioxide's not doing anything. You can't blame it on the carbon dioxide for doing it if the model's false. If they weaken the sun, the sun's not weak in reality. You have to have a model that models reality. You can't have a model that models non-reality in order to demonize CO2. That would mean that CO2 is not doing it because the model's false. And I tried to get that across to this guy at the golf course, and like it seemed like he just was more adamant at defending the model, and he's just like, "Well, you believe what you want to believe and I'll believe what I want to believe." And I'm like, "Look, you can't do that. If the model's false, the model's false. You can't just." And it's like this is the mentality. And that same guy, I know that he's going around the golf course saying, "Oh, that John dude, that John dude, I couldn't believe it. I talked to him the other day, and like, he's crazy. He doesn't believe in global warming. He's a denier." And like I know that he doesn't even know what solar flux is. I even asked him, I'm like, "Do you know what solar flux is?" He's like, "Oh, that don't matter. Are you saying that you're smarter than all of these scientists?" And I'm like, "Hey, look, I understand the model. I understand solar flux. I understand, how, uh, a spectrum works, spectroscopy works. I understand photons and light, and, when you send it through the prism, like why the red end of the spectrum is wider, and like why the violet end of the spectrum, the bands are more narrow whenever you see the rainbow that's produced by it. There's like all this stuff, and I know heat goes from hot to cold, and that's it. That's the definition of heat. Heat goes from hot to cold. It never goes from cold to hot. But like in the global warming model, it's so crazy. They have heat going from the atmosphere, back to the earth that heated it in the first place. That's like saying that the earth actually makes the sun hotter, or if you have a flame and you have an aluminum bar and this flame heats the aluminum bar, they're saying that the radiation will go back and make the flame hotter. That'll never happen. This bar will never get hotter than that flame. you know in order to melt that bar, you know you have to have a temperature that's equal to the melting point of that bar. But like it's never going to send back the radiation like a laser beam back to the flame. At best, this flame will heat the bar, and then the bar will radiate it out in all different directions. It's not sending it directly back to the flame. And heat can't go from heat can't go from cold to hot anyways. That's the laws of thermodynamics. It can never go back, because like you have something vibrating faster and then you got something vibrating slower, the molecules. So with this higher energy form, it can only go from hot to cold. Even radiation doesn't, there's no such thing as radiation radiating back. Even those laws of like thermodynamics, there are none. Radiation can't even go back. So there's like so many contradictions. There's the fire, There's the atmosphere, where the sun comes through the atmosphere at a lower angle versus at a higher angle. When the sun's at a higher angle, it comes in more direct through the atmosphere. Like that contradicts their model. Solar panels don't work at night. They only work in the day when the sun's intense on it, and they work more whenever the sun directly hits it, not when it comes in at some weird angle. Even if you did face it at the horizon, you know, like it's not going to be as intense in the morning. Like the solar flux is not going to be as intense. Another contradiction is that in the global warming model, when they average the intensity of the sun, it's only 342 WM2. That's watts per meter square per second. So it's the sunlight hitting 1 square meter area every second, and then it produces 342 watts. But like whenever they go to sell you a solar panel, they say that the sunlight hits that solar panel at sea level at 1,000 watts per square meter, like every second. So like they know that the sun is coming in very intensely, you know, onto their solar panel, but in the model, they say that the sun's not intense. So that's a contradiction in itself. Is it intense or is it not intense? Does a solar panel work at night or doesn't it work at night? And yet in their model, they have solar panels working at night. So it's just a bunch of sophistry, the global warming model. And, I just can't believe the mentality, like people like that they're ignorant and then they just go and spread the hysteria. And, this is a major issue when people want to regulate all the, power supplies and, way people farm, what cars people drive. They get grants and they're draining useless, money that they can be using for something else is going to all these colleges to teach this stupid model. We can be using the money for something else. And, they go in and they're selling solar panels, which are less efficient, which drives the cost of like power up and everything, and stupid windmills. The windmills, it takes like 20 years before they recoup the money that it costs to build the things. Recoup the money from the energy it makes. It takes more of the lifetime of the windmill just to get the money back that it took to make the windmill from the energy that it produced, the amount of money or energy it produced to make the money back to begin with. It's just super inefficient. And like the earth is actually low on CO2. It's this trace gas in the atmosphere. Whenever they build greenhouses, they pump CO2 into the greenhouse because the plants need more CO2 to grow better. So like the atmosphere is actually low on CO2, and they're trying to like demonize it because it just fits all their stupid agendas and their Green New Deal and in the government. And there's all this money being made, by pushing it. And I hate to see people going into hysteria and they just keep pushing it through the media, and people, keep saying like, oh, well, why is it getting warmer? Well, it's not because of CO2, because it can't do it. Like the model is like demonizing CO2, and like the laws of thermodynamics go against, the model itself. But I guess I'll stop the video right there. It's starting to get like around 19 minutes.